Yestalgia podcast. This is Basil.
I'm Chicka Drew Shady.
I'm broken. This is Amanda.
God damn it.
I wasn't expecting
Me either.
I know.
So, you may be able to tell that we're going to be doing something a little bit different this episode. Just to mix it up a bit, we decided to do a music episode, and we may be doing more in the future. We'll see how this one goes. But in this case, we each chose an album based around a general theme. This one was the first album that was yours. You didn't have to have paid for it, but the first one that was truly your album.
You wanted it.
So we each picked a different album that was, you know, something that we remembered being our first album. So we'll each say something about the one we picked. Amanda, would you like to start?
I picked SWV. It's About Time. And I really, really wanted it. I was really, really into it. And my daddy gave it to me for my birthday when I was a little kid.
Cute. Do you remember around how old you were or no?
It was when it came out.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I was probably like 10 or 11. Like, they were hot shit. And I was all about it.
Cool. Did you ask for it or was it just given to you?
I did ask for it. When this album came out, you could not go to a little girl slumber party without hearing this cassette. You would flip it until the thing got hot. People played it until, and by people I mean little girls, we played it until like the tape warped. So yeah, I desperately wanted it. I remember my dad gave it to me as an early birthday present too, because he was like, I know you're jonesing for this. And I vividly remember this. We lived in a townhome and I knew exactly what it was because it was perfectly cassette shaped and sized. And yeah, it had like a cute little note in it that was like, happy birthday. I love you. Hope you enjoy.
Cool. Great. Drew, would you like to go next or I can go?
It's probably pretty apparent what my album is, but just in case, my album is the Slim Shady LP by one Marshall Mathers, aka Slim Shady, aka Eminem. I was around 8 years old when this album came out, and my brother played it. I heard it, and I eventually, how should I say, liberated it from his collection. It was, still kind of is, a very important album to me, even though, well, we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
I loved this album when I first had it, and I still like it now. But yeah, that's an album that pretty much everyone knows of, at least, if they don't know it as well as I do, which most don't. But
infamous.
Yeah, it's infamous, if not famous.
Yep.
It rocketed him to stardom.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's my pick.
For me, I picked En Vogue Funky Divas. It came out actually the same year as SWV's did. Interestingly, we picked one that came out the same year. My memory around that time is like really hazy. So if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not 100% sure this was the album I got, but I'm like 99% sure because I remember there used to be it started as a bookstore and they sold overstock books. They were only ever in New England, and my mom and I used to go all the time because one of them was by her work. And I just remember finding a CD. It was in black and white. It was definitely an R&B album, and we actually had a CD player earlier than some other people. I know that. And so, yeah, it very likely was not in 1992 when I did get it. But I saw it at the store. I was with my mom and I said, I want this. And it was probably like maybe a year after, possibly two, because it was all overstock things that they sold. But yeah, I loved this. I loved their hits because they were all over the radio at the time. They had several hits from this album. And in particular, another thing that was local and only in New England, there was a pizza place and they had an old jukebox and one of their songs was on it. Actually, technically two, because they were on a Salt and Pepper song. They were like featured on it.
What a man.
Yes. And so that was also on the jukebox. So yeah, I knew them and I went, I need this. Please.
When an En Vogue song came on back in the day, it was special. Like if you heard it over the music at the mall or whatever, you were like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Crank that shit.
that was how I got my hands on that. And yeah, I think I mentioned this off pod, but I don't think R&B I'm as interested in these days. Not that I don't like it, I do. But I do tend to go for things like even mellower, but I still really enjoyed listening to it. Who wants to go first in terms of talking about your album?
I'll go first.
Yeah. Okay.
So, SWV is an R&B vocal trio from New York City, known alternately as Sisters with Voices. In 1992, Lily, Coco, and Taj topped Billboard charts with the hits I'm So Into You, Right Here, and Weak off their debut album, It's About Time. As one of the best-selling albums of the early 90s, It's About Time was a must-have addition to many 90s girls' cassette collections, including me. So, to elaborate even more, because this was like the hot music when I got it. I heard it when it came out and I wanted it. I went to an all-girls, I don't want to call it a daycare because I was 10 or 11, but it was like an all-girls after-school program. And that's where I first heard about SWV and heard their music. And we're just a group of 10, 11, 12-year-old girls, and we're like, okay, you're going to be Coco, you're going to be Lily, and you're going to be Taj, and you're going to sing the soprano, and you're going to sing the alto, and all this. Like, we were so obsessed with it. So I don't know if this is just like an everybody thing, or if this was just me and my little girlfriend group.
Well, I'll say when listening to it, I very vividly remember Weak, the song, and I could sing along to the chorus at least. So that was very familiar to me. Yeah. I think I mostly at the time listened to the radio, which is why I think I'm so fuzzy on getting my first album, but I do remember them on the radio for sure.
Yeah, they were all over the radio with Weak, Right Here, and So Into You. And out of those three, upon my re-listen, So Into You, I liked it, but it's not my favorite of their hits. Right Here, I liked the Free Willy version better, the one at the end of the album. But Weak, y'all, I have been singing that at work for the past few days, like just out loud, not even giving a crap if anyone hears it. It's an earworm.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
Yeah, it's really catchy and it's really easy to sing.
Yeah. Drew, do you remember any of these songs at all?
I think only So Into You.
Fair.
Oh,
Yeah, that one got played. Also, the thing, too, about SWV is that those three hits got played for a really long time after this album release. So, yeah, they had a little, despite not really releasing too much follow-up material, I want to say they had 2 albums after It's About Time, and they were spaced out pretty far.
Yeah, they did that a lot more often, I think, at the time, too. Like, I feel like you would hang on to one album for a little while.
Yeah, just juice it for all it's worth.
Yeah, and then finally put out something new. I could be wrong. They could be a perception thing.
They were able to do that, though. They were well within their rights to do so because they had a great product. They were all three very, very talented. For some weird reason, I remember them being younger, and I'm certain that was me, my younger perspective. Like, all cool stuff comes from super young people. As a matter of fact, I don't even know how old they were when they recorded this album. I guess I should have looked it up. So since this is sort of not an experimental episode, but since this is the first episode of its kind that we're kind of doing, I just sort of went through the list of their songs and I picked my favorite and my least favorite track off of each album.
The one thing I'll say about this whole album is it is so fucking horny.
Like, I was going to say.
The horniest album.
It kind of seemed like it took a real shift after, I think, like song 10.
Downtown. Yeah, so you've got Anything. Very good. So Into You. Like I said, liked it, not my favorite. You got Right Here. Then you got You're Always on My Mind. They put their radio hits up front. And then all of a sudden, you get to Downtown. And I was like, holy shit. That's when I was like, these were grown women.
Yeah.
That song was, every single line had some kind of pretty well-crafted euphemism in it. Like, that is the key to my love. You gotta go downtown. Like, make no mistake. And then you've got a couple of songs in between, like Coming Home, I thought was blah, Give It to Me was meh. And then you get to Black Puddin', where they're like, make no mistake, what we said before, we are not fucking joking. Like, they double.
I noticed that. I was like, oh my God, they have 2 songs about going down on women. All right.
Yeah.
That's what I meant, song 9. Black Pudding.
Yeah. Which I'm going to tell you, like, when Black Pudding came out, I was like, thank you, a mix-up. Because I think a lot of their songs, unfortunately, sound very similar. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Give It to Me and Coming Home is like...
Yeah. When Black Pudding came on, I was like, wow, this is really refreshing in terms of, like, the beat. And it was, like, definitely more up-tempo and...
Sure is different.
Yeah.
Of the two songs about going down on a woman, I'm going to say I preferred Black Pudding.
Really?
Even though that one is hornier, like significantly hornier, I just think it was a better song.
You guys, I've been driving around town, like practically singing downtown through my fucking moonroof, like standing up in the car. I have hurt my ears on that song. And it was not a song that I clocked when I was 10 years old for reasons that I don't need to explain. But there I was.
I was going to say
10 years old me sure was singing it like at the top of my lungs.
So inappropriate. Did your dad know how horny this album was?
You know what? I think he did the same thing that everyone else did. He listened, they put their radio hits first. The first 4 songs are just very tame and generic. And then you get to downtown and literally like my eyes went wide at some point as I was listening to that song. Wide with like, oh, hell yeah.
I do think they have euphemisms in almost every one of the songs, but they're mild for the most part. And then there's a couple where it's like, oh, much less mild, particularly, again, Black Pudding. Black Pudding had the least chill, but I still liked it.
That's why I liked it. It had no fucking chill.
Yeah. It's, I don't know.
They put it in your face. No pun intended.
Yeah.
It must be pudding because, what does he say? It must be Jello because pudding don't jiggle like that.
Yep.
Hang on. Another line from that song that I really love is where he's like, you can leave your fake fingernails in my back. And she's like, I may not be a lady, but I'm surely a woman. I was like, oh, I like that. You're so spicy.
Yeah, I think also because up until then, it was a very kind of slow R&B, right? Like a much mellower version of R&B. This one like kicked it up and had a little more like hip hop influence. So it was also a little refreshing when we finally got there because everything else was real mellow up until that point, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. There were a lot of songs where it would start and it would start so slow because the type of music that I really like is danceable and very few songs on this are. I guess it depends on what kind of dancer you are. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I was either like, meh, shoulder shrug, or I was like, fuck yeah, downtown, crank it.
Yeah. Also, I'll say, okay, I'm going to bring up musicals again because I always do. But in a musical, there is a song like I Am and I Want, right? Sometimes they're the same song, sometimes they're two different songs, but they exist in every single musical pretty much because there's a main character and they want something and you learn who they are, right? It's funny. I feel like all 3 of these albums have that song in them, but SWV's is at the very end. And I was like, this should be the first song.
Well,
at least like earlier in the album.
The fact that it's their only song like this, I think is sort of why I think it was intentional. They wanted to make it sort of like the bridge. They wanted to make it sort of the space between 2 chunks of similar styled songs. Sort of a palate cleanser, if you will.
But that's the thing. It is closer, I think, to Black Pudding than a lot of the other ones. So if it was like second or third, it would have actually been further away. That's what I'm saying, like, not to bring up the other albums, but Eminem's I Am song, it's his first song. Or that's what I consider it to be. There can be some debate about that.
It was his first hit single. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. But the rest of his music is still true to form. Like, that's his piece de resistance.
Yeah, that's fair.
But the rest of his music is the rest of his albums, period, I think are true to form.
Slim Shady LP was his most, well, his true first album might have been worse, but between the two of them, his very first album and Slim Shady LP were, in my opinion, far more aggressive than his future stuff. The next album, the Eminem LP, might have been kind of close, but everything after that was, I feel, a little tamer. Because he had the fame, he didn't need to try to grab for it anymore.
You are correct. Oh, dang. I gotta save all this for when we get to Eminem.
Yeah, that's why they want the same
I
thing.
mean, I think we can make, connections between them. Particularly, I'll say En Vogue and SWV are not dissimilar, right? They are R&B girl groups. So, there is a lot of similarities to be had there.
I just want to back up just a couple of minutes because I'm still trying to defend Black Puddin' being kind of in the middle toward the end. Let's say if Eminem was like singing most of his songs and then in the middle he did My Name Is, that would sort of be like more, he's still doing the same.
Because that would be so wildly different in the middle.
Right. And I do feel like Black Puddin' is pretty damn wildly different.
Yeah. But I think the one that's SWV in the house, that one is what I would consider their I am, because it's like telling you a little bit about them, right? And when you have an I am song, I do prefer it to be at the beginning. To be fair, En Vogue does the same thing where their I am song is way later.
But if we're doing Venn diagrams, that's one that Eminem and En Vogue has. Their albums start with this skit.
Oh, yeah.
They both have a few skits.
Yeah.
Actually, all of them do, because Slim Shady has a bunch of them.
And SWV has a skit.
Or sorry, Eminem.
Slim Shady has a bunch of them. SWV has, I think, one. And it's like one of the very, very first songs where they're basically telling her, put down the phone or whatever. He's got you fucked up. I think that was the only one.
Yeah, and then En Vogue had like a couple, the biggest one being in their first song, of course. And maybe for them, they felt like that was enough of an I am. And it also was not their first album. So that might be why. Anyhow, I will say I didn't hate It's About Time. I did find times where I was kind of zoning out a little bit because all of their songs have basically the same content, if that makes sense, or like subject matter.
I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, so you would have to listen to the album over and over and over and over again. And I know this because I did this in order to appreciate each individual song. Now, it has been a really long time, like some decades, since I've listened to any song off of this album. And I absolutely agree. There were songs where they would start, and within the first few seconds of it, I was like, I was already kind of like, not hating it, but I was like, I'm bored. And by the time the song ended, I was like, wasn't so bad. But still, I'm certain that's not the reaction they were going for folks.
Yeah.
It has a handful of songs on it that just slap. Their radio hits are good. Even So Into You, I'm not so into that song. But it is one of the better ones on the album. But yeah, no, I was so here for Downtown and I was so here for Black Puddin'. Like, if I never listened to if I had to pick between Weak and Downtown and someone was like, you can only listen to one of these for the rest of your life and you can listen to no other song off this SWV album, I would pick Downtown as a grown-up. 10-year-old me would have picked Weak in a heartbeat because it was the song.
It's really funny, too, to think of, like, I feel the same way a little bit about the En Vogue songs, where, like, we were both children. So we didn't know anything about love and especially sex, and it's just funny that there is so much of that in like R&B, and it's like aspirational, and in a way it's not unlike other pieces of media where it's like where you're sort of starting to learn about what love might be like or might look like.
Spoiler alert, I grew up into a person that this still doesn't apply to. I do not want to make love all night long. I'm tired and I've had it and I'm mad. I've been hurt.
Well, they were in like their early 20s, so it's a little different.
Hey, what are you trying to say?
Well, being tired is more likely to happen to you if you are 30 or over, I would say.
I can't stand you.
Yeah. Hey, I feel it too, man. Like I complained about that earlier where I was like, I'm so tired for literally no reason.
So I hope to one day conquer my fears and have my father on this podcast because you guys are going to be like, y'all are the same person. I am also like extremely impersonable, and I'm even with people I truly love. I'm like, I love you so much. You're my soulmate. Let's go to our separate rooms and sleep in our separate beds. Like, I can't deal with your bullshit. So The thought of cuddling up on somebody and loving up on somebody all night long, I'm just like, they're going to snore and they're going to get hot and I'm going to sweat. It gives me anxiety.
Hey, Tim Burton and Helena Bonham Carter literally live in 2 different houses. They're like next to each other, I think, but...
I don't want it that extreme, but...
Crazy.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, because there does come a time where your sleep is more important than fucking all night or whatever. I don't even think I'd want to fuck all night. My God.
Fucking all night.
Okay, this obviously has to do with personality, right? And like how you feel or whatever. But no, I get it. I do think they're thirsty in the horny sense, but they're also like thirsty in the love sense a little bit, because the whole album is just about like loving a dude and him being good, right?
The song Coming Home, which was actually my most blah song off this album, I remember as a child thinking, because she said something like, it goes something like, I'm coming home, you don't have to be afraid. And I'm like, is he afraid of her coming home? It almost sounded like a warning, like, I'm coming home, you don't have to be afraid.
Yeah, but the song is more like,
you no longer have to be afraid because she's coming home.
It was about faithfulness, and I'm coming home to you every day is the end of that sentence. And 10-year-old me would never have guessed that. But however old I am, me is like, oh, that's so obvious. Like, you don't have to be afraid because I'm always just coming straight home to you.
I mean, I don't think that's exactly, because there's a part that says like home is where you are, right? You know, it is a sweet song.
Yeah, no. I'm making it sound like she's chained to her dude.
Yes.
And it doesn't come off like that. It's not. She's just like, look, never doubt me.
If this was written while they were doing stuff for this album, it's very likely she was not at home all the time, right? Or they weren't at home, right? I'm saying it like there's one person, but right? They're not at home that much. They're working really hard.
That makes sense. I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, even though we're apart, I still love you and we are still together. You're still my man. Like,
and I wrote a song.
Yeah. Which I like that sentiment. You know, because to be honest, when you get to it, I was kind of like, blah, another song about love, right?
Yeah. It gets kind of boring.
But, you know, when I'm looking at the lyrics, I'm like, this is a very nice sentiment. Like, I like the sentiment more than a lot of the other ones that are basically just, I love you.
Let's love all night. Also, you better eat that. I'm not joking.
What?
Also, the whole like eating pussy thing is serious.
Gotcha. That's a good sentiment too, honestly. I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised at the content of some of these where it's like, well,
I was too.
More the R&B ladies, but where these thoughts were so progressive, and for the time, of course, there's some stuff that's maybe outdated at this point, but yeah, it's not being afraid to be sexual and be a woman, which was like real new at the time, and
they'd made innuendos.
Yep.
But then a few tracks later, they had another song where they were like, now we're going to get even nastier with the innuendos. They even had a male vocalist, and I should have looked up who he was. I did not. They even had a male vocalist on Black Puddin' that was like, fuck yeah, I'm here for it. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. Because a few years later, you get to Miss Lil' Kim, who just went balls to the wall. Like, I don't like talking too much about completely unrelated media in episodes, but she was the other end of that spectrum where she was like, I'm going to be as graphic as possible, which was cool. That was another one of those albums that I had to have. And I think I was 14 when it came out, and I got it simply because my parents had no clue. They were just like, sure, go hog wild, whatever. Lady in tabletop position on a polar bear rug, whatever.
I mean, there's like no innuendo in that. It's just straight out saying it.
Favorite albums, though.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And this is a lot more toned down than that for the most part. I don't know. Black Puddin's pretty, particularly because I'm listening to it going like, I know Amanda was young, probably like no older than 10 or so. Can't have been older than 12 for sure. Right. And I'm just like hearing this song and I'm like, holy shit, this like little girl was was listening
That was my holy shit song. Yeah, it was. I was at work and I was listening to it on my headset. And even though I know no one can hear it because it's in my headset, I was like looking at the door, looking for shadows approaching because I was like, God damn. I don't remember it being, because why would I? I had no context for it. I was just like, yeah, you gotta go downtown. That's the way to my love. Anyway.
That's where all the good shopping is.
It's all very good. No, I won't say very good. It's an album that has very good songs on it. I liked it more as an adult than I did as a child. And that kind of says a lot. I think as a kid, I was probably just pressing rewind on Weak and So Into You and Right Here.
I was talking to Billy a little bit about this, where it's like, it's okay if you don't love every song on an album. Most of the time, that's the case, right? Because there's a whole genre that people talk about, which is like a no-skip album. You don't skip any of the songs.
Right.
Which implies it is rare with everyone, right? So I guess it's fine. You never have to feel bad because you don't like a song on an album, you know, or if you don't like several songs even, they're just not to your taste.
Yeah, just wear out the songs you do like.
Yeah, for sure. Because, yeah, like, I can't even remember the last time there was an album that I loved every single song. It's been a while.
I also can't think of one off the top of my head.
Is there anything more y'all want to say about?
That's the love that you've been dreaming of. Sorry, it is just like blasting in my head. It's so good, y'all. Thank you. It's a gift.
Drew, do you have anything more you want to add?
Everything was pretty much covered on this album.
Okay. Are you okay moving on from that, Amanda?
Yep.
Okay.
Satisfied.
Awesome.
I'm going to give, it's a definite Yestalgia, but there are big chunks of it that I could give or take. And it's cool because it's like, oh, I don't hate this. I just don't want to listen to it.
For me, I think it's like a soft Yestalgia because, yeah, like you were kind of saying, there are times I was like enjoying myself. Like I was really into the songs. They are a bit repetitive for my taste, I'll say that. So I had a hard time with a lot of them, especially finally coming towards the end. I was kind of like, no more songs about love that are like slow jams. But it's not terrible or anything. Drew?
For me, it's Yestalgia too. Although there are a few songs I would skip on a regular if I was listening to it. And like Basil said, they're kind of repetitive. But with me, that's kind of R&B in general for the most part. So yeah, keep that in mind.
I mean, that's fair. Let me back up and say I wouldn't call myself an R&B fan. Not even really back then, which, okay, in the early, I know I said move on, I'm sorry. In the early 90s and even like the mid 90s, there was a very wide berth for R&B artists. Unlike what there is right now. Because like right now, I couldn't tell you a single relevant current R&B artist, and that's not because of a personal musical choice.
If I recall correctly, Ariana Grande's first album, which like really didn't get much play at all, was a like R&B throwback kind of album.
Maybe that's why it didn't get much play at all. Like the early and mid 90s, it was like, it was really cool and it was all over the radio. And when you went into stores, it was playing over the Muzak and stuff like that. Now it's not so much. Anyway, I forgot what my point of that was. We can move on.
Well, I mean, I think speaking of R&B in the 90s, we can move on to mine. You want to talk about even more of it? Yeah, my pick was En Vogue. So a little bit about them. They were founded in 1989. They were set up basically by two producers who specifically wanted to make a girl group that was like reminiscent of the Motown girl groups. So they held auditions. They were originally going to be a trio. However, Terry Ellis had missed the auditions because her plane was late, which apparently she also used her rent money to get on that flight in the first place. And she was able to record something for them to listen to, and they heard her and they were like, she's great. We're going to put her on. So they ended up becoming a foursome. First, their name was U4. Then they changed it to Vogue. Then they found there was another group called Vogue, so they ended up with En Vogue.
Correct choices were made.
Yeah. If you want to say it the French way, En Vogue.
En Vogue.
En Vogue. So yeah, the album we listened to was Funky Divas, which was actually their second album. Their first one was called Born to Sing, and that one had gone platinum, but Funky Divas went triple platinum. It was also nominated for 5 Grammys. I don't believe it won any of them, but you know, Grammy's so white and all that. Free your mind.
And the rest will follow.
Okay. Specifically, their video got 3 VMAs. And then that year, I believe it may have been 93. I would need to look that up again. They were honored with Soul Train's Entertainer of the Year award. So they had a good 92, 93. So yeah, that was En Vogue. Like I said, my memories of these are pretty hazy. Anything before I was like 14 is pretty hazy, if I'm being totally honest.
I can help you out because you just mentioned it. This album came out the same year that the SWV debut came out. So my dad let me borrow this album. Like he had it. It was his. And I really remember, I feel sort of similar as we all do about the SWV album. There were some on here that were just like, ooh, I got chills. Like that was really fucking good. Even more, like the goodness on this album was even more intense. And then it just had some that I was like,
Yeah.
Right.
Especially once you started to get near the end, I think it started to peter out
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. But I remember this being more adult, and I don't mean like more adult contemporary, like more, you know, Kenny G boring type of shit, but I mean like grown-ups like En Vogue. You know, little girls like SWV, which is fucking hilarious because in reality, it kind of almost feels like it should be flipped. But En Vogue,
Yeah.
I remember En Vogue was marketed to
Adults more.
adults. Thank you. I almost said older people, and then I was thinking of like, you know, grandma and peepaw. And SWV was sort of, I highly doubt that it was marketed toward girls, but little girls cleaved unto SWV for some weird reason.
Well, I will say the actual women in each group, the En Vogue ladies were more like in their mid to late 20s, and SWV were more like in their early 20s. So they were literally older as part of it.
They were literally older, I guess. And again, En Vogue was something else that you would hear over the speakers in the mall, and you would be like, oh, hell yeah. But as kids, there was always something else that we wanted more.
I don't know. I think for me, En Vogue and Salt and Peppa were where it was at for me when I was that age, because I think I mentioned this previously when we talked about doing this format about the pizza place. So it had a jukebox and it had these things, but there also were 2 very large radio stations at the time that I remember. Actually, there was probably like 3 or 4, but these 2 were the biggest. And I think we talked about how one of them was broadcast everywhere. I think the other one probably was too, but so Kiss was
Kiss FM.
was in Sacramento, right? And the other one was called Jammin'. And so Jammin' would play more like R&B and rap and stuff. So I was starting to get into that, and like hip hop as well, into that music more at the time. Because if I'm being perfectly honest, because my friend was into it. And, you know, I didn't have that many friends, so I really had to hang on to the ones I had. But I also actually liked it. I didn't dislike it or anything.
That's how I learned of SWV.
Yeah. So while I listened to Kiss sometimes, Jammin' was the one I mostly started listening to. And so I definitely heard a lot of Salt and Peppa and En Vogue. And so I think those really stick out to me. Yeah, they had a few hits, and boy, do I remember them so much. I was for sure singing, it wasn't just this album, but this one, and a little bit of SWV. And I started listening to other music afterwards, but Billy was like, girl, you're singing so loud. I had to turn the television up downstairs. So I was like, okay, I'm feeling myself.
Was it giving him something he can feel?
I don't think so. Probably. I don't know. For sure, My Lovin', I remember so well. And Free Your Mind, I remember so well. Something He Can Feel. I mean, that is a cover, so of course I know that one. Yeah. Yesterday a little bit. And so here's what I'll say about Yesterday. They do have 2 covers on this album. Giving Him Something He Can Feel is originally an Aretha Franklin song, and Yesterday is originally a Beatles song. But another group that I was super into at the time also covered Yesterday, and so I have kind of a preference. So it was Boyz II Men, who, oh my god, I loved. But I think they came out a little bit after this, or were most popular after this anyhow. And so I don't know if it's a biased thought that I like the Boyz II Men version better than the one on this album. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
I think I've ever heard the Boyz II Men version. I believe this was the first time hearing their version. So I heard the Beatles version.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say the Boyz II Men one is real stripped down. It's a cappella completely. So there's no music. I guess in that sense, I think I prefer it because of that it's like very stripped down, because the original song is kind of stripped down in general. Yeah, there's instrumentals in the original song, but they're pretty mild and like whatever and kind of stripped down. And then the Boyz II Men one is also very stripped down. And these ladies have incredible voices, but I think in their version of Yesterday, they're doing that inflection thing to show off a little bit more than I prefer. I don't know if I'm being fair.
In Vogue, in my opinion, they made that song their bitch. Like, I was like, Beatles who? I don't know her.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can't say really, their voices are so amazing. Like, it is really hard to say any of their songs are bad,
Right.
but because I really love the Boyz II Men version, I just think I cannot appreciate this.
The best 3 songs on this album for me was Free Your Mind, Giving Him Something You Know, and Yesterday.
2 of those are covers, Amanda.
They owned it.
Great. Their voices transformed them.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Yesterday was a cover. And when I heard the real version by the Beatles, I was like, this is lame. This doesn't give me a shiver up my spine the way the In Vogue one does.
And that is the thing about it, where I'm like, I feel like I am biased because of the first one I heard, right? So, or I must have heard this one, but I very, very vividly remember the Boyz II Men one for some reason. And I still love the ones that came out as singles, so that I remember. So, like, Never Gonna Get It, Free Your Mind. I kind of liked Hip Hop Lover too, and Giving Him Something He Can Feel. Those were the ones I specifically remember being their singles that were like played the most on the radio. That's the thing. Like, I wrote a little something for most of the songs until I got to the end and was kind of like, okay, I'm not feeling any of these.
Never Gonna Get It was played to death on every radio.
It's in a ton of movies.
Constantly. And I don't know if this is the fault of the song or if this is the fault of the constant bombardment. But to me, I actually did skip that one because I was like, I don't need it. It's fresh in my mind.
I fucking love that song.
I like it too, but I get what Amanda's saying. You've heard it so many times, you don't need to hear it again. You already know how it goes.
Yeah. No, I get, like, I understand where you're coming from. I don't feel that way at all. I still fucking love this song, especially because it's the song that's saying like fuck you, but it's not like vitriolic the way fuck you is, right? It's emotionally mature in a way. Does that make sense?
I think that's why too this album felt more adult. It was more mature. I'm not saying that SWV was immature because I'm not trying to pit all these bad bitches against each other, but In Vogue just seemed more fancy, for lack of a better word. They were divas. They were funky divas, okay?
Yeah.
A bit more put
There
together.
is a little more polished, but not like their music was more polished necessarily, just like their kind of aura.
There was a production value there that was,
there you go.
Yeah.
It was tangible. Yeah, it was perceivable. Again, not to say anything negative about SWV. I'm just saying this is what was noticeable. This is what was exceptional about In Vogue.
And to be fair, they were very produced. So I think they had access to things that it's very possible SWV did not. Like, obviously everything's produced, right? But they were literally brought together using an audition process for, I don't know how SWV was put together, but I do know for sure En Vogue was produced. They were brought in together to be a group by producers. You know what I mean?
They were manufactured, yes.
A little bit, yeah.
They were handpicked. So SWV, as far as I know, just from the very little that I read in preparation for this podcast, was they were a package deal. They were already performing together in a gospel setting. They already knew each other. And from what you're saying, these ladies didn't know each other in the beginning. Not that that matters, but, you know.
But I mean, it's not as organic, right? So you do end up with a more of a polish, if that makes sense. And it's very possible they were specifically looking for women that, you know, looked put together. You know what I mean? Like, because again, it was produced, they were manufactured in this way. I do know I read something that made me so mad where the producers were like, we were looking for women who were beautiful, but not too beautiful. And I was like, excuse me? These women are incredibly beautiful. What the fuck are you talking about? Right? Like, what?
They still are.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. So only 2 of the original members are still as En Vogue. And they, like I said, they stayed whole. But so they are in their 60s.
Right.
Both of them.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's another woman who had come in afterwards, and she's younger. She's only like 47. But like, oh my God, they look fucking incredible. They're so beautiful still. How you could say the women in En Vogue are not that pretty is astounding to me.
We wanted to be low-key absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. They also said we wanted women who were smart but not nerds, or sorry, intelligent but not nerds. And I was like, fuck you. I know. It was all very stupid and made me mad.
God forbid women do anything.
I'm sure nobody batted a fucking eyelash at it then. But like, these songs are very empowering, which is why those statements are a little surprising, right? A lot of them are. You know what I mean? Like, of course, Free Your Mind. And Free Your Mind was like, I'm looking at the lyrics, I'm like, this is so progressive for that time period.
It gave me chills a few days ago when I listened to it for the first time in a long time. Their voices are so powerful.
You mentioned that they started in gospel. That makes a lot of sense because however you feel about gospel music or, you know, all that stuff, it does lend to an extra bit of soul, which is very palpable.
Yeah, when you're feeling the spirit move you, that's how it comes out.
Now, I don't know if any of them were in gospel stuff, if I'm being honest. They probably were.
So I was talking about SWV was in gospel.
Right, SWV. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. But if you get all the way to the end of the album, they're all pretty religious. So it would not surprise me, if I'm being honest, if they were.
Yeah, the last track of the album is basically like a prayer of gratitude.
Yep.
Fun fact, interesting fact. Again, don't want to pit all these bad bitches against each other, but I did find it interesting. I just did a Google search, and did you know that the SWV album sold like 10 million more than the En Vogue album did?
Whoa, really?
Yeah, right?
Oh, that is so surprising to me.
I know.
I mean, it's not that. I honestly thought En Vogue was considered a little more...
Was more mainstream?
Yeah, but I guess not. So here's the other thing about En Vogue is that I think they started doing appearances and commercials and stuff like that. And I think that's what made me assume, you know, that the album was really, really successful, which, don't get me wrong, it was very successful.
Hey, it was, and this might have been, the difference might have honestly been 10 million little girls asking for the SWV album.
Very possible.
Also, adults who like that bedroom music, if you will.
They want to fuck.
Well, yeah, I think there's less songs about that. A lot of the songs are not about fucking.
Well, giving him something he can do is a little bit horny.
Or I think they were a lot more subtle about it too, is the other thing. Yeah. Their innuendos are pretty hard to pick out if you are not an adult and you're not like pretty well versed in it, you know?
Yeah, like 10-year-old me could walk through the TJ Maxx singing Giving Him Something He Can Feel at the top of my lungs, and it would come off way better than me singing Downtown or Black Pudding.
Yeah, I think you can make it an argument about it like not really being about that.
There's plausible deniability.
Yeah. Just really quick, back to Free Your Mind. They do talk about being colorblind, which I think everyone knows nowadays what's wrong with colorblindness. But the general idea of colorblindness is not a problem. It's just it becomes a way to also ignore racism.
Correct.
But
it's like when people say black, white, green, orange, and you're like, come on.
Well, and
let's not get crazy.
I will say this, because of the kind of idea of colorblindness, and those things were like taught to me in a school that was majority white people. So when I got older, when I was like a teen I was like, well, racism's actually dead.
Hooray!
But then I actually, so particularly because I started to hang out in a more diverse area when I was a teenager, that I was like, oh no, it's not gone. Okay.
Yeah, it's not gone. You were just colorblind.
Yeah. Anyhow, in general though, love that song about, it's kind of just about like letting people be who they are, that criticizing other people is not cool, and don't be prejudiced.
Another line from that song that I didn't take away until the most recent listening, and I can't remember exactly how she put it, but I'm totally paraphrasing. She said something like, I have straight hair, but don't read anything into that. She was basically like, don't fucking ask me about my hair.
She kind of says like, having straight hair does not make me not black, right?
Yeah, thank you. And when I heard that as a kid, I was just like, shoulder shrug, it went right over my head.
Yeah, they talk about some very interesting things in that song. Particularly in that verse, they, I think, talk about double standards for black women and white women and double standards for just black people in general, like that people would assume they're selling drugs and
There's a unique oppression.
Yeah.
The song is about a very, very unique oppression.
But it's about a few different kinds too, which I think it seems like this is based on things that we have experienced of people being prejudiced against us in different ways, right? Like, and most of it is around race. Almost all of it is around race, to be honest.
All of it. Yeah.
But yeah, what a good song. I'm trying to think of another one I really liked.
I'm at a toss-up between Free Your Mind and Giving Him Something He Can Feel.
Yeah.
Like the best song from that album.
You can't hate Giving Him Something He Can Feel. It's just a really good song. Either Aretha singing or them singing, but they did a very good job on it. I like it a lot.
When you said, I'm going to pick In Vogue, you didn't even have to say the name of the album. Not that I have... Honestly, I've not heard any other album but this, but when you said the words In Vogue, I had that song stuck in my head for days until I listened to the SWV album, and then it was Downtown all the time, constantly.
I will say some of their songs are talking about things that are so often talked about. So much in this album is so emotionally mature, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like this
is a big girl album.
Yeah. Particularly I had written down in Give It Up, Turn It Loose, which I think was also on the radio, but I don't remember it as well. It's like great breakup advice. Like these things, and they're not vitriolic, right? That's what I mean by like emotionally mature, where like you hear songs a lot of the time about these subjects. Their subjects are not wholly unique or anything, but they're unique in the fact that they often are presented in a way that is much more emotionally mature than a lot of other songs that would be about the same subject.
Yeah, just give it up, quit trying, and now turn that ass loose. You're good to go. Mm-hmm. Good job.
Yeah.
It's so simple. We don't have to dwell.
I'll say in Hip Hop Lover.
That was one of my least favorite songs.
Really? I liked it. Like, I have mixed feelings about it, if I'm being perfectly honest. It is a whole, like, seduction song, which I'm into, but they have this part at the beginning where they're, like, harmonizing, and it's so beautiful. I can gush forever about their voices. Life-changing.
Did you notice in the beginning, the skit that they were doing in the introductory track, where they were like... Yeah. Oh, what was the man's name?
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh, it's so-and-so. And they're like, listen, it's going to be so-and-so. It's going to be so-and-so. They harmonized when they were like, come in. Like two of them said, come in. And it was like unintentionally harmonized. That synchronicity. I liked that.
Yeah, their voices are beautiful. Their songs are beautiful too, but their voices are beautiful all the time. You can't deny that.
But not too beautiful or too smart.
Well, and they harmonize great with each other, which is another reason this album's pretty good, you know.
It was really natural.
Yeah. I have one more thing to say about it, which is it had a lot of funk in it that I didn't remember. Like some of the songs would tip kind of into funk a little, particularly This Is Your Life.
They're funky divas.
Yeah. But I was surprised because for me, I remembered like, oh, this was an R&B group. You know what I mean? And then I'm hearing it and I'm like, there's so much funk in the song Desire too. There's a guitar riff that sounds so porny. Like Oh, they had a few songs that had samples, and that is the thing, I think, about a group that is a little bit more manufactured, is that you get a lot. And to be fair, their first album did pretty well, so I think that's why. But as well, like, it's not just that they were kind of a group that was a bit manufactured, but they just had, I think, more of a budget for things like covers and sampling.
They probably had a bigger team, too.
Yeah. And there was one song, I forget which one it was now, where they had when it was originally released, it had a sample and then it got taken out for some reason. I never was able to figure out the reason because it was someone just sort of talking about it. And like, they also showed an example where there are like 2 audio clips of them taking out. And then it was put back in for later releases of the album. So that was weird. I don't know if there was something legal that was going on with that or not.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. But yeah, there are some samples in their songs too. And by having that kind of budget, it does really help your album. Yeah.
It says they lift ideas from James Brown and Aretha Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they definitely lifted an idea from her.
Well, James Brown, there is for sure, I believe, a sample of his work somewhere. I again forget which song it was. I should have written it down. I don't have a whole lot more to say. Do you guys have anything else you want to?
Just that these are some funky divas.
It's an apt title. Do you guys want to do our yes and nostalgias?
Oh,
Yeah.
Dokie. Basil, this is yours. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I could go first. This is a Yestalgia for me. Like, I don't think I find myself going to R&B much these days, and I don't know that this is going to start me doing that again specifically, but I still think this album is very good. It was, and I hate to say it because I feel like an asshole because it's my own pick, but I liked it the most. It was the experience I had the best time with of all the listening. So yeah, it's definitely a hard Yestalgia for me. I loved it.
Drew?
This one too, despite my not being a huge fan of R&B in general. Well, I shouldn't say that.
We're sorry, Drew.
Early 90s R&B, I'm not a fan. I just don't know much of it.
Hey,
I know
you got us back. Don't worry.
I know R&B from before and R&B from later, but early 90s R&B is kind of my
blind spot.
Yeah, blind spot. Thank you. It's a Yestalgia though. I really like some of these songs. Like I said, there's some ones I know, but even the ones I didn't know, I liked. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Amanda?
So, Basil, we are mirroring each other. I'm going to go soft Yestalgia on this one. I did remember, and I know I told the story about how this was my dad's album. He let me listen to it. And I remember playing it as a 10 or 11-year-old. And I was like, there's really only a couple songs that I'm here for. And I replayed them to death. And that hasn't changed for me. With SWV, it changed for me in that I appreciated at least a couple more songs. Not all of them, but my reaction to this album has net zero. Like, there is no change from how I felt about it as a little kid. I actually think I played it for a few days and then gave it right back to my dad. And hey, now we live in a blessed world where I can just pull up Spotify and type in "giving him something he can feel" and get my fix.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great. Excellent talent. Yeah, I liked it. So you had a hard Yestalgia on this one and a soft Yestalgia on SWV. I had like the opposite.
Yeah.
I had the vice versa.
Now it's time for the trial of Yestalgia versus Eminem. My pick, if you couldn't tell from my intro, is the Slim Shady LP by Eminem. Eminem is an artist who I'm pretty sure most people know. Like I said before, during the In Vogue, even if you don't like him or listen to his music, I'm pretty sure you know him.
You know he exists.
Right. Eminem started out as a battle rapper, was discovered by, he was seen by Jimmy Iovine at a battle rap competition and tells Dr. Dre. So Dr. Dre decides to listen to the Slim Shady EP and thinks, I really want to work with this guy. So Eminem heard a beat, and the first thing he said was, "Hi, my name is," and the rest is history.
I didn't know that. I mean, I knew the thing about Dr. Dre, but I didn't. It makes sense.
At least that's how the story goes. Eminem, Marshall Mathers, made this album at a very, fairly young and angry time in his life. So keep that in mind when you judge this album.
You don't say.
No matter how you feel about the man or his music, you can't deny the impact that he has had on the genre of hip hop and rap. Most of the rappers who are considered most people's top 10 nowadays cite Eminem as one of their greatest influences. So
this is not my favorite album of his.
Mine either, but it still has a place in my heart.
So you told us in the beginning of the episode a little bit about how you came about this album. It almost seems like you whisked it away.
Yes. It's not really stealing. I mean, it is, but in a roundabout way. My brother, I listened to it with him a lot, and then he let me borrow it to listen to it myself, and then I just kind of never returned it.
Oh, he gave it to you then?
Yeah. I'm not sure if he wanted it back or not, but...
What year was this?
Maybe not.
I guess what my question is, was this around the release date, or was this,
When I listened to it the first time was around the release date. The time I actually acquired it permanently was a few years later.
What was the release date of this album? The release year?
1999.
It was a good year.
It was in 99, the first half.
I do remember this coming out, and it was like early high school for me. It was my first year of high school, I believe.
And you remember the release of Hi, My Name Is?
Yes.
Because, yes.
Very, very well. Yes.
He came in like a wrecking ball.
White t-shirt and beach tear.
Mm-hmm. It was impactful.
Scary.
I liked it. Right. I turned it up and hurt my ears to it.
And I'll do it early, since you guys are talking about record sales on yours.
Do it.
Yeah.
This album, well, to this day, I don't know, it still sold well back then, but now it has over 14 million equivalent record sales worldwide.
Now, wait, Drew, hold on, because that can't be... Hold on. Slim Shady LP. I've got to know how much it did on release. Sales.
This week it was 283,000 copies.
You're kidding.
Yep, it was number 2.
Did you say 283,000 copies?
Yep, it was number 2 on the Billboard 200.
Okay, I see what you're saying. First week of release, right. 282,000 copies. Okay, that's nothing to shit at. And then I'm also seeing like a grand total, 10.4 million. Okay, when this album came out, we were getting ready. The zeitgeist at the time, I said it this time. The zeitgeist at the time was we were just starting the Iraq-Afghanistan wars. And I only say this because not on this album, but
a couple albums
in
later,
future albums of his, he has some stuff to say about it.
He's very vocal about the president at the time.
Right, which good,
because he sucks.
Yeah, I appreciated that. That's fine. Yeah, I remember I was getting ready to graduate high school when this album came out. And when Hi, My Name Is hit radios, everyone was like, what the fuck is this? It was so it was kind of neat. It was different and it was funky. And it was almost like, is this guy for real?
That's part of what got him as big as it did. The fact that he was so different from other rappers of the time. That's some of the complaints that fans of rap have about Eminem, that he sounds like other rappers. Like he's trying to copy them.
I think Eminem sounds like anyone but Eminem.
Well, people at the time claimed that he sounded like Nas.
No.
Certain flows he'd had back then sounded similar to Nas.
Maybe his later stuff, but not the Slim Shady LP.
But oftentimes those kinds of complaints are a little unfounded in that you are the product of what you have listened to previously, right? And your influences. And so I don't know that that's a fair thing to say most of the time. Sometimes things are too similar, right?
Right.
But yeah. Sorry, I'm not saying a whole lot because I fucking hated every second of this. I hated it.
His success can also be attributed to, but not solely, of course, to the fact that he had Dr. Dre producing his tracks. Dr. Dre, who is pretty legendary in the production of rap beats.
Well, and his own rapping career as well. Yeah, I think that gave him a lot of cred, as it were.
It gave him a bit of starter cred.
Another thing that gave him cred was the novelty. And it is a novelty in that Eminem is situated in a black art form.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was white was novel, I think. It was just like, there, of course, had been white rappers before Eminem. But they weren't as, and I'm not going to use the word good, I'm going to use the word
Successful.
Skilled?
Yeah, that's Eminem is highly skilled at his craft.
Yeah, I can't disagree with
He
that.
has said himself in songs later that it's pretty much all he knows how to do.
That's fine.
So he works as hard as he can to perfect it.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. This album has songs that are, difficult, I suppose was a word for the current time. They were difficult then, but they're really difficult in the current climate. But if you look past the actual subject matter, the songs themselves are pretty lyrically genius in a way. I mean,
you have to separate. I know exactly what you're talking
Yes.
about. You have to separate the skill
Right.
from the content.
exactly.
Which is very difficult because the content is quite challenging. I'm just gonna
Luckily,
put it out there.
in later releases, he's calmed down a lot, especially since he was very drug fueled in the beginning of his career and
Thank God.
going to the somewhat middle of his career still. But around 2008, he got sober.
Also, thank God.
A lot of people don't like some of his music that came right after that because they feel that he wasn't as raw and didn't have the same fight as he did in his previous stuff because being clean made him too clean.
So let me ask you, okay, the Marshall Mathers LP, was that post to 2015?
Marshall Mathers LP came out 2 years after this.
Yeah, I was very close behind.
Okay, so we're still
So yeah, he's still very much the druggy guy.
question asked and answered. Because I remember, oh God, I have experiences. I have personal experiences with this album and this artist. But Drew, I want to let you finish your thoughts.
Was colloquially known as a stan. Have listened
Coined
to
by the man.
Yeah, exactly. That's his impact on music in general.
Yep.
He coined a phrase in his second album that's now a major part of all fandoms.
People who do not even know
Right.
that. They know the term, they don't know where it's from. But yeah.
Exactly. And the songs on this album, of course, the most famous, everyone knows, My Name Is. That was his first one. The first song on your album becomes as big a hit as that did. It is pretty much guaranteed that you're going to be a big name.
And it was so weird and goofy too. Like everybody was just blasting that song.
It is kind of an I Am song, which I like that it's at the beginning.
Yeah, they decided to put it up first because it introduces who he is, and throughout the song shows the
Content.
the content that he will be known for later and tell you who he is, not just in name, but in personality.
Yeah.
But the reason this was called the Slim Shady LP was because he is more of his alter ego on this one. Even though it's his first album, he's performing more as his alter ego than his actual self, Slim Shady,
This is an affectation.
who is insane.
I think that's why people saying that this is more raw is surprising. Because, like, if I'm being honest, he was genuine on maybe one song. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to tell you, in the whole thing, the only one that felt like he was completely telling the truth and not making any jokes was Rock Bottom.
Yeah.
It was like earnest, and honestly it was refreshing from what I had been listening to up until then because it was so actually earnest, right? Because I'll say there was another song, If I Had, like starts out where it seems like genuine and personal and sincere. And he can't stop himself from joking around in it. Which, like, his jokes aren't funny and they're edgy. They're that dumb, edgy humor that people loved then, I suppose. They're all about, like, R-wording women and, like, assaulting them and just all kinds of horrible things. I don't know.
Guess I'm just a sick bastard.
Talking about doing horrible things to other people. Like,
The last time I listened to this album was right around its release date. I was also in an angry phase, and this kind of music, there was almost like a cognitive dissonance. Like I was picking up the vibe, I was picking up the energy, and I was picking up like the fuck youism, but I wasn't really picking up every single word. Like I was this morning when I listened to this album on my car ride to work, and it elevated my heartbeat. So upon my most recent listening, I was like, whoa, he really fucking spells this shit out. He is like, I am going to assault you. I'm going to violate you. I'm even stepping around it. He's like, like that I didn't remember. I was like, whoa. Put some nuance on it, like put a little innuendo around it. But that's part of his brand.
But there's none of that.
Okay, and also, hang on. Us complaining about this is like us complaining that the penguins were black and white. This is the brand. This is what he does. This is how he built what he has. So we almost have to examine Eminem in a vacuum as best as
I cannot do that because it's horrible. Okay. The things he says are horrible. And the worst thing is, it's not like everything he says. Much of it is not morally reprehensible, right? Some of it's tongue in cheek and like whatever. But then he says things that are like morally reprehensible too. Like doing drugs. Okay, this is obviously my own personal moral system, I suppose, but there's no way, it's pretty hard to argue that the morality of doing drugs, right? Like do whatever you want to your body, right? And honestly, if there is addiction, there's usually something else going on there, which again, in the one song that I felt like was genuine, Rock Bottom, he does sort of talk about like why somebody might do drugs, right? But he thinks that that's just, okay, this feels so much like Repo in that it's like he puts that same thing on the same amount of edginess as saying he's gonna R-word someone. So like, I can't get behind it at all because it seems like it is just to be shocking. It's not for any real content. It is him making a disgusting joke. Like, I can't deal with it. I just can't.
That's why I'm saying, and Basil, it doesn't really change for a while. Okay. So that's why I'm saying like, it's almost like criticizing the penguins for being black and white. And I know that's extremely dismissive, but like to your point, me, I've had some experiences with drugs. I've told you guys about them off the podcast. You all know. Never once during that time in my life, which went on for years, did I ever feel like sexually assaulting anyone or murdering someone or even like, I don't know, flipping off a truck driver as I drive on the overpass. Like that is to me a cop-out. It's sort of like, oh, okay, I get you were having a rough time, but still, like on my worst of days, I have never felt like being violent to someone. But it's the brand, it's the purpose, it's what he uses to sell his bullshit. It's the shock value. It's a performance.
I know, but it's a crappy performance that I don't like. Because like, I don't agree that I've never thought about violence in terms of like anger, but he basically admitted on another song far, far in the future that he hit his wife, Kim. So, like, this is not a theoretical. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it was in, like, I think, like, 2007. It's Bad Husband, right? Where he talks about how he was a terrible husband for her. And
boo-hoo
he does imply that she hit him, but he was like, I didn't have to hit back, right? And I guess when he does kind of admit that, it's sort of like some of this violence unfortunately feels real now. Do you know what I'm saying? Like not just something you're saying.
So the song 97 Bonnie and Clyde made me want to vomit up my fucking toenails. Okay?
Especially when you're bringing a child into it. Like
that was it.
So him and Kim did get back together.
Shut up.
Once this was actually finally out, I believe they were together again. And they were off and on for a long time.
Yeah, they got married for a little bit.
Stop it.
Yeah. And
they got married for about 3 months.
They got divorced, I think, pretty soon before he became sober.
If my baby daddy released 97 Bonnie and Clyde, you can best believe that I would be releasing my own fucking album in which I graphically described how I was going to kill him.
Well, and I guess that's where I'm kind of like, maybe some of this stuff is not 100% talk.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like, I don't fucking know him. You know what I mean? And I'm not making any specific accusations because, like, I don't actually know, right? I just, because of the things surrounding some of it, it makes me wonder a little or, like, think that.
We're going to talk about Eminem all night. I can feel it.
Maybe the things he is saying are not 100% only words. Because when people are in an abusive relationship, they tend to go back. So at least one of them might have been, you know, so it would suck if he was the victim, but I don't know that he was.
It's not impossible. It's statistically unlikely.
Yes.
Also, did you guys know that Eminem was a big time ICP fan?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I was talking to you guys about before we started. This is the I heard. Guess what I heard? So I read on the internet that, because, you know, they're both from the same spot. They're both from shitty part of Detroit, right? And they were both sort of getting cranked up at the same time. And from my understanding, Eminem was a huge ICP fan, and he wanted, and I could be totally wrong. No one hold me to any of this. Do your own Google searching. I think he wanted to collaborate with them, and they were sort of consistently no, we're busy. We're not into you. They just sort of kind of kept giving him the cold shoulder and brushing him off. And I believe the story goes that there's a venue in Detroit called St. Andrew's Hall. Mm-hmm. Again, could be totally pulling this out of my ass.
That part is definitely true.
Yeah, okay. So evidently, Eminem printed up a whole mess of flyers.
Yeah.
That was everybody come to my show on such and such date. I'm going to be performing with Insane Clown Posse. And Insane Clown Posse found one of these flyers and was WTF bitch. And from there on, there was a beef that you can actually listen to. ICP straight up released a song called Eminem's a Bitch. They released a song called Eminem's Mom, I think. And so having listened to the entirety of many Insane Clown Posse albums in my younger years, I can tell you that the Slim Shady LP, it follows that formula. There's a lot of skits that are homophobic and violent. If you've never listened to The Great Malenko, listen to it and you will hear the parallel of that and the Slim Shady LP. However, I will say, I do not remember any of ICP's albums as terrible as they were. They have never outright, I think, been I'm going to sexually assault someone. They might have it might have been in there, but they didn't fucking spell it out. My point is, I feel like this album was Mr. Mathers trying to emulate something too hard, also, on top of all the other fallacies.
I'll say that why I'm not surprised is because I do know that ICP's lyrics also frequently have violence against other people.
They are incredibly violent, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not that surprising. However, one thing I did want to say is that, so there is a sample in My Name Is, mostly it's that bass line mostly, but by a man who was openly gay. So he was not super keen on it.
What?
Yep.
That's the reason there are 3 versions of that song, except just 2.
Yeah.
Usually you have a dirty version and a clean version. That song has 3. A super clean version, more LGBTQ friendly version.
Yeah, because in the OG, he has a line about R-wording lesbians and a gay junior high teacher. And he basically said you can only use my sample if you take those out.
All right.
And then later on, he wrote Labi Siffre. I don't know if I'm saying that last name correctly. Did write in his liner notes when his album was being re-released, attacking 2 of the usual scapegoats, women and gays, is lazy writing. If you want to be radical, if you want to do battle, attack the aggressor are not the victims. And I think that's the whole thing for me about the entire album. All he does, and like, it's a fucking pussy move for a man to hurt a woman. I'm sorry. It doesn't make you strong. It makes you weak and lame. And so much of this content is talking about that. And it's like, it almost never talks about, well, I don't want to say never. There is a couple times where he does talk about violence against other men, but he frequently talks about violence against women throughout this album. And it's like, you just look like a pussy. I'm sorry.
The whole diatribe about the baby mama really, really stuck in my craw, because that is what a narcissist will do. They will make it out to be like, she's so mean to me. Like, through the whole, I'm going back to 97 Bonnie and Clyde. He was just whining about how, like, she was making me mad. She was doing things I didn't like. She was making me upset. She's the bad person. So it's okay that I'm going to dump her in a lake. That is what also a narcissistic abuser will do. They are very good at garnering support against the actual victim. And that could be me reading into...
Not to defend him in any way, like, boo. But I do think that you have to be a little narcissistic, at least, to pursue a career that involves being famous. Let's be honest.
Yeah, okay. And as Drew said, he was a rap battler.
Yeah.
That's his thing. He gets up and that's his job, essentially, is proving superiority in a skill, which we already know. Eminem, you have skill.
Okay, but Busta had already been out for a long time.
Right.
Just saying.
But Busta respects him as a lyricist and rapper. So
fuck Busta then. No, I don't know. I'm gonna tell you, I've been on a kick about, like, women who have been mistreated by men, usually in some sort of capacity, about their own skills being, like, diminished or whatever. And so it made me especially mad when I was listening to this, I think, because I'm currently researching a lot of things about, like, you know, women's accomplishments that have been either destroyed or claimed by men or whatever, or, you know, their careers were destroyed or their lives were destroyed by men in their lives. And it makes me so angry. I just can't sever those two things. Do you know what I mean? Because it's all the same. It's all something that's always been happening. And there's just so much that essentially supports violence against women. I mean, until more recently, and even still, actually. But it is hard to be a woman and listen to that and know the kind of horrors that women have had to face throughout history, and just have something that's just like another straw on the stack. And the camel will never die. It's like a fucking, I don't know, robot camel or something.
No, it is. It's, if you think about it, I want to say, if you are in the room with 4 women, it is highly likely that at least one of them has experienced some kind of physical abuse, etc. This shit is alienating. Which again harkens back unto ICP. They could not sing a song without talking about a quote-unquote fat bitch. Like, they had to say those words in every single song.
Which one of them is fat? So, like...
Right?
Even more hypocritical.
But it's okay, because he's a dude.
Okay.
It's okay for guys to be fat.
We can stop shitting quite as much, because, Drew, I do want you to speak more about, you know, your own feelings and your own kind of thoughts about it now, listening to it again.
Obviously, the lyrics themselves are less than ideal, as I kind of said before. But Dr. Dre's beats, Eminem's unique flow, the way he strings the lyrics, no matter how unpleasant, is quite masterful. So
he is skilled.
Yeah, I still find this album entertaining in that respect, even if I abhor the messaging of most of the songs. He has calmed down a lot since then.
Yeah, I get that.
He's done a lot to help his city and state and bring up other rappers behind him to gain some fame. I'm not going to defend the ideas that he portrays in this album. In fact, nowadays, I doubt he would. But yeah, this is the album that made him famous, and can't really deny that
he has to ride that pony.
it did help him get famous.
Yeah.
So it was a success in that regard.
I thought about that.
I kind of feel like I'm actually a lawyer defendant getting ready to go to death row or something.
And you know what? And you are. But let me just say, Basil, you said you didn't find any of his jokes funny. I did find one of his jokes funny, and it was on the track Come On Everybody.
Yeah.
And I say it that way because
The song title itself.
that's the way it was spelled.
Yes.
Like, it was spelled in Spotify, CUM on everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
So in that track, he says something like, I got on stage in front of a sold out crowd and told everybody, get the fuck out now. Like, that to me, I just imagine that. And like I laughed out loud as I was listening to that.
The following lines were, fuck rap. I'm giving it up, y'all. I'm sorry. But Eminem, this is your record release party.
Yeah, okay. That song was, and I'm using this term subjectively, that was my favorite track on this whole album. It was the only track that didn't just beat me over the head with icky stuff, and also it did have that line which made me laugh. Woof. This, I don't even know where to go from here with Mr. Mathers.
So I genuinely liked Rock Bottom. That is the only song where I felt like I genuinely liked it.
I mean, it's okay, but that's one of my least favorite songs on the album.
Yeah.
I thought he was whiny and pandering and being like, poor pitiful me. I felt like that on a couple of tracks.
I feel like it is the most heartfelt. It is the only time, it feels like it's the only time you're seeing past his bravado. Does that make sense?
Seeing Marshall.
Because he's talking about the kind of things that essentially led him to drugs and alcohol, right? And the kind of things that happen when you are poor. Because I don't know that people don't like to hear about that, right? But he's saying this is what it is genuinely like. And this is why I am an angry person. And this is why I do drugs and alcohol. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes sense.
And let me just, do y'all care if I read the lyrics? Not all the lyrics, but like the opening lyric.
Go ahead.
It says, this is to all the happy people who have real nice lives and have no idea what it's like to be broke as fuck. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope without a circus net. Popping Percocet. I'm a nervous wreck. I deserve respect, but I work a sweat for this worthless check. I'm about to burst this TEC at somebody to reverse this debt. Minimum wage got my adrenaline cage full of venom and rage, especially when I'm engaged. And my daughter's down to her last diaper. It's got my ass hyper. I pray the God answers. Maybe I'll ask nicer. That hurts. Yeah. Okay.
So I think this shows how he could have not been so shitty.
Use his power for good.
Yes, because I think this song is the only one where I can get out of that, God, this man is a horrible person, right? And be like, okay, he is talented, obviously. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I guess this is the only way for me to see his talent, because it's not laced with all that, like,
posturing.
Yeah, and the shit. And he talks about stealing in a way that it's not, like, glamorous, and I don't know.
Right, do what you need to do.
Yes. And so
I've turned around on this song. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's the only one I could really enjoy myself listening to, because don't get me wrong, the beats are fucking great, but that's not really attributed to Eminem, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't really attribute that to him. It's mostly like Dre and sampling, which also then is attributed to someone else, but then putting it all together in a certain way, you know.
I just really want to say real quick, I hope that our listeners get that the point of this podcast is exactly what we're doing right now. It's like getting it out and being like, okay, I've changed my mind. Because I think in the state that we're at right now, people are doubling down and they are so afraid to say, I've changed my mind. Or I can still enjoy a part of something that is super bad.
Yeah.
So I'm just like Repo. I'm enjoying this conversation. I like it. I'm not here to condemn completely anything. I'm always going to try to find whatever the media lets me find. Yeah. And in this case, guess who's back again. Shady's back. When that album dropped, holy shit. That's going to be my next music pick. Drew, I'll take one for you.
Well, I mean, it'll have to fit.
Pretty much got everything about Eminem out there now.
I know.
Hazel's like, you'll have to find another person.
Not much change between the Slim Shady LP and the Marshall Mathers LP.
You'll have to tie me up and prop my my ears open. And I think this is, if I'm being perfectly honest, this is not so outside of the norm for rap at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, it...
Because we're focusing specifically on Eminem because that's what my thing was. But Eminem is not that bad. I mean, it's still bad, yes, of course. But it's not extraordinarily bad if you're measuring it against other rap of the time.
And I think that's why I never really got into rap. It was hard for me to be a woman and listen to it because it often degrades women so much. I mean, of course, there are women rappers and I don't want to like discount that they exist. But like most things, women don't get the same kind of acclaim. They don't get the same kind of attention. And I think that there are more today, actually, I would think, than there really were, because it used to feel like there could only be one woman in the game at one time. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like let's even think back to like Nicki Minaj, Cardi B. It's like, which one do you like better? Why are we having this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that conversation does still happen with male rappers too.
Does it?
There are huge debates over who's top 5. I can just listen to all the music but not choose top 5.
It doesn't get to be 5 for women. You know what I mean? It's 1. Only 1 can be in there. Mm-hmm. Women make up half of the world.
Yeah. When Nicki Minaj fell off, it was who's better, Cardi B or Megan Thee Stallion?
I think it's a little bit better because these women are all doing pretty well, like all together, right?
Rap in general, I think, has gotten way, 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 way better. I mean, as far as like being outwardly misogynistic and like spelling out stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Think of, I'm just pulling an artist out of my ass. This is probably dated. Think of Migos. I can't think of a single song where they're talking shit about women. They're talking about like making drugs and, you know, walk it like I talk it. And they're mostly talking about drugs. White t-shirt.
And if they talk about women, they're talking about getting women like the good way, not forcefully.
Getting women the good way through drugs.
No, not forcefully, just, you know.
Yeah.
Having good game.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I will teach you how to whip it like a stir fry. That's fine. I'm here for that. What's women empowerment? Teach me how to make cocaine. It's empowerment.
I mean, it's better.
Hey, I gotta learn from somebody. Fuck.
Well, and it does feel like you sometimes have to take crumbs and it sucks, but...
Actually, I am perfectly okay with being taught how to make drugs by a man. Thank you. You have expanded my resume, sir. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm fucking stupid.
But yeah, while it is not something that was out of the ordinary kind of sucked too. And it was...
All right.
I think that's the thing. Like, I listened to a little bit of rap, but there was just so much misogyny in it. It was difficult to listen to.
Yeah, it got to a bursting point at one point. And then it was almost like...
And it was kind of around this, I think.
Yeah.
It was like early 2000s.
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ready to say yes to nostalgia.
I think we all know, but we can say that. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Despite everything that was said here on this podcast, the Slim Shady LP is still a nostalgia for me.
You own that truth.
I never really did, but I don't agree with a lot of the lyrics. But the lyrics are said in a way that is pleasing to the ear, my ear at least. And that is kind of what I look for in music. Not necessarily, I don't always, I mean, New Eminem I do because his skill has grown more, I feel, and lyrics are more about better subjects than before. But back this time, I mostly just listened to his flows, connected to the beat, and yeah, this is still nostalgia for me.
I do want to say, Drew, I hear you. The perfect word to describe this album is dissonance. There is a dissonance between Marshall Mathers' skill level, the way he performs his art, his craft. You cannot say he's a shit rapper. You cannot say that. There's a dissonance between his skill level and his content. Excuse me. I almost said his competence, and that would have completely wiped out what I was saying. No, he is quite competent.
Right. In the field of rap.
Right. I will also say, to answer the question, this is a definite nostalgia for me. And the reason why I'm so just putting that out there is because when this album came out, I really did love it. I had the dissonance. I really, truly wasn't hearing. I was, like I said before, I was getting the vibe and it was matching what I felt at the time, but I wasn't really listening to the words and I wasn't really concerned with how the world was affected by this incredibly successful rapper. Because there were people that heard this album and were like, yeah, fuck bitches, like fuck women. Like there were people that took this and ran with it. I wasn't one of them. You were not one of them. So many people were just like appreciating what was there to appreciate. So yeah, while it is a nostalgia for me, I will give credit where credit is due. Ooh, I'm sweating.
You're sweating.
I think it's so obvious this is a nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
I think I knew about Eminem in a periphery kind of sense, right? Like I kind of know some of the chorusy parts of his songs and I would hear them here and there. And I think this was around the time of TRL and it was probably getting requested a bunch. But okay, so starting out before this, I was like, okay, it was always going to be a little bit of a hard sell to get me on 90s rap, right? But I was neutral, right? I feel like with Eminem, I was on a neutral ground, thinking I might enjoy some of this. And I fucking hated it. It made me angry, and not in the way it's like supposed to, if that makes sense. Like it made me angry at Eminem.
Rebuked it.
Yes. And it kind of made me hate him a little bit.
Shit.
Yeah, it makes me think he's just a bad person, the end.
Right, and that's on him. That's not on you. That's his responsibility.
And the other thing is, like, there's, he can't even put any death of the artist on it because he's still around and he will still make money from these horrible things he said, right? And I think that's another thing that just makes me angry. And I guess, like, I can't get behind pushing your anger outward so much either. And I don't know. I basically said everything about
it was tough.
About how I feel about him, that it is tough for me to listen to. If he did more that was more like role models in terms of the heartfelt and genuine and like sincere, I think I could have got at least a little more on board with it, but he wasn't. So
if he would have just kept on rapping about drugs and that's it, I would have been here for it. But you know what?
That's okay.
And he is a part of the culture, because even right now I have that song stuck in my head. It's not even a quote unquote Eminem song. It's like, these chicks don't even know the name of my band, but they're all on me like they want to hold hands.
D12, my band.
Oh, yeah. It's how he was able to achieve such widespread success. And then here comes 50 Cent. Speaking of Dr. Dre, I think Eminem actually had more to do with the success of 50 Cent than Dr. Dre did. You know what? I could talk about this all night. We've got to stop.
Yeah. So anyways, clearly a nostalgia for me. So yeah, that was our music episode.
Didn't you love it?
Depending on how we feel about it or people who listen, we'll talk about revisiting something similar later. Yeah. Any nostalgia before we head out?
Since we're doing music, I will say who I've been listening to.
Okay.
I've been listening to a lot of the band Set It Off and also Scene Queen. They often work together, as well as Corpse. They're all in
Corpse is Corpse Husband. I didn't know for sure, but
yeah.
I thought it was, yeah.
The three of them are all kind of in a similar genre. Corpse more with rap than Scene Queen or Set It Off, but they're all kind of that alternative. Corpse's big thing is his deep voice, because he has GERD, suffers heavily from GERD. It makes his voice sound very deep and raspy.
Is there anything else?
I'm good.
All right. I will go because I know this is painful for Amanda. Well, I saw Mean Girls in the theater, the new movie.
Ooh la la, in the theater.
Yep, in real life.
You fancy bitch.
I don't go outside, so it's a thing. The marketing liked to pretend it wasn't a musical. It is a musical, for sure. And I don't know if I'd recommend it. It was fun if you like musical movies, if you liked Mean Girls. You'll have a good time. Was it good? No. So I'll say that. But it is a fun watch if you're into either of those things. For music, god damn, I don't know if I've been listening to anything new. I've been revisiting old favorites. Like, I was listening to Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. If you've never listened to that album, please listen to that album. It's incredible. And Santa Gold and Journey. Escape specifically for Journey and Master of My Make Believe by Santa Gold. That was actually my palate cleanser after Eminem.
Damn.
Yeah, those are the people I've been listening to, though none of it's new. It's all old-ish. Santa Gold is the most recent, and that's still at least 10 years old, I'm pretty sure. Yep, came out in 2012. So, do you have anything that you would like to Yestalgia, Amanda?
I have been watching the back of my eyelids. I don't get a whole lot of chances to do it. But when I do, it's always like fucking spot on. And I pretty much never want to stop. I'm like locked in, basically.
Mm-hmm.
As far as music goes, I have been listening to the sound of a podcast that I'm probably on like my 5th or 6th listen, simply because it has now become a psychological security blanket. Send help.
Okay, cool. That has been our podcast for today. We hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.